a poor lumberjack who lived in a little cottage with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. After the paper mill closed down, he had no work and they were very poor. His second wife hated his children and was always nagging the lumberjack about them. "We can't afford to feed them too," she said. "Oh, you'll have to bring them into the city and leave them there. People there are rich. Someone will take them in and give them a better home." Well, the lumberjack refused her demands, but she kept insisting it was for the good of them all. The children heard them arguing at night and were very afraid. Gretel comforted her brother. "Don't worry, I'll bring my new phone. It has a GPS and it'll show us the path back home." The next day, the lumberjack woke his children early. "Come," he said, "we're going on an adventure." They drove and drove deep into the city. The buildings got taller and the streets darker, and still they kept on. Finally, he stopped at a corner store. "Run in and get us all something to drink," he said. "I'll wait here." Well, when the children came out, their father was gone. Hansel started to cry, but Gretel took out her cell phone. "We just need to follow this. We'll be home." It was a long walk, but by nightfall they had returned home. Their father was overjoyed to see them and pleased with how smart they were. And their stepmother flew into a rage, grabbed the cell phone, and smashed it. All the next day, the evil woman argued with her husband to take the children back to the city. Eventually, he relented and promised to leave in the morning. The children had overheard it all, and Hansel was again upset. "Don't worry," said Gretel. "We'll figure out something." Early the next day, they headed into the city. They drove and drove deep into the city. The buildings got taller, the streets darker, and still they kept on. Still they kept driving, even further than before. Finally, their father stopped and opened the door. "Go, children. I'm sorry, I love you, but you have to go." And he drove away. The children held hands and gazed around. The streets were dark and empty, even in midday. The shop windows all boarded up. "Come on," said Gretel. "Let's get walking. We'll find someone to help us." They walked and finally came to an open store. Hansel looked in. "It's a candy store," he said, "and it looks empty. Come on." Gretel followed him in. "We don't have any money. We should just leave." "Oh, I'm so hungry," said Hansel. "Just a little bit." So they each had a little bit, and then more, then more. Suddenly there was a click behind them. "So, what do we have here? Some thieves?" They turned and saw a tall woman, all in black, standing in front of the closed door. "Oh, naughty children," she said, "but such pretty children." She reached out and fondled Gretel's hair. "So photogenic." "We're sorry," said Gretel. "We'll leave now. Our father will come back later to pay you all for this." "No, he won't," said Hansel. "He left us downtown, and he doesn't care anymore." The woman smiled. "Isn't that nice? Don't worry, I'll look after you." "You let us go," said Gretel, "or we'll—" "You'll nothing," said the woman. She grabbed little Hansel by the arm and dragged him into the back room. She pushed him into a cage under the counter, locked it, and hung the key high on a hook. "There, that will keep you," she said. She turned to Gretel. "And you behave, or he stays locked up and gets no food." "I'll be good," said Gretel. "I want you to be pretty too," said the woman. "Sit here while I take some photos of that pretty face." "Was that all you want?" said Gretel. "Oh, that's all I want for now," she said. "Once I get some customers interested, we could do more. Show some more of you, if you know what I mean. Dress you up, dress you down." She opened a cupboard full of DVDs and stacks of money. "You'll be my new online star." "Gross," said Gretel. "I'll never do that." "We'll see," said the woman. She pushed on a panel and a door opened in the wall. She pointed down the narrow stairs. "Get down there and think about it. Don't bother yelling. No one will hear you." Gretel stumbled down the stairs into the damp basement. There were some lights and tripods at one end and a rack full of clothes. She piled some of the clothes in a corner and fell asleep on them. The next morning, the woman let her out of the basement, gave her some food, and asked her if she changed her mind. "No way," said Gretel. So the woman opened the panel and sent her back downstairs. Every day the woman asked the same question. Every day Gretel refused, and every day she watched her brother getting thinner. Finally, she couldn't stand it. Okay, she said, let's do it. Just promise you'll let us go after? Oh, of course I will, said the woman. She gathered up camera bags and lights and gestured towards the wall. I'll open the panel, or there's a deer. My hands are full. Oh, I can't. I don't know how, said Gretel. Stupid girl, said the woman. She put a few things down and opened the door. Gretel crept around behind her, braced herself, and pushed the woman through the door and right down the stairs. She slammed the door and slid the bolts closed, then jumped up onto the counter, grabbed the key, and opened the cage. Come on, Hansel, she said. We're going home. She opened the money drawer and stuffed handfuls of cash into a bag. Let's go, she said, out the back, so it looked like the place is still closed. She spotted a cab approaching and waved a 50 to flag it down and gave their home address. Their father was overjoyed to see them and begged their forgiveness for leaving them. He'd had a huge fight with their stepmother, and she'd taken off with the car and all his money. Well, we're poor, but we have each other, he said. We'll figure out something. Hansel whispered to his sister, What about the money? We'll wait a few days before we tell Dad, she said. No hurry. And what about that mean woman, he said. We'll wait a few days before we call 911, she said. No hurry. The end. I made Gretel stronger in this version. She's also the practical one. For the second story, we were to pick 4 words from a given list and use them. I used cape, senator, funeral, and gloves, and a couple of my fairy tale folk characters. Stakeout. Romulus swirled his black cape. Well, I like this. I might keep it after. He tugged on a pair of white gloves. It does look nice on you, said Red. You make a good vampire. How are the teeth fitting? Well, I'm used to them from when I'm a wolf, so no big deal, he said. I must say you're looking especially delicious in your outfit. Red adjusted her stocking seam. Sort of a trailer trash look. Big change from skipping through the woods, but we need the work. She pulled her bodice up and tried to pull her skirt hem down. I think this is way too short. What am I supposed to be again? A skirt can never be too short, he said. You're supposed to be my girlfriend, and an occasional snack. My food, companion, and pet. A snack pack, a concubine, a thrall, a bloodmate, a blood whore, a gore girl, a subjugate. Stop, she said. Subjugate? As in juggler? Oh, I like that one. Okay, now, door number 1 or door number 2? They were in a large funeral home, filled with other mourners, most of whom seemed to not mind the way she and Romulus were dressed. Dark, brooding vampires and slutty sidekicks seems to be the norm in here. She had thought vampires were either undead and walking or dust, but apparently some took some time to revive. In the meantime, their friends and relatives liked to play at funerals, leaving the soon-to-be alive again on display and vulnerable. She and Wolf have been picked because of the mental power they developed while doing various grim stories, a way to really become the characters and to add believability into people's minds. Hopefully the vampires would be fooled and would not be able to control them like normal humans. Hopefully their other powers would also enable them to escape. That was the theory. Romulus sidled closer and she slapped at his hand. Watch it, buddy. He smiled. Just adjusting your costume for you. We need to stay in character. Maybe a little snack? Maybe you'll get one with a kick to it, she said. I do have my taser tucked in here somewhere. Now focus on the job. Well, there were a few normal funerals here too, but she saw what must be the entrance to the senator's, as it was framed with masses of sickly sweet lilies. She nodded toward the doorway. How tacky. I'm betting that's our target. Now all we have to do is sneak in, stake the senator, and disappear. Not that big a crowd, said Romulus. Not that famous or infamous as I would have thought. He still has some enemies, she said. Enemies that don't want him to keep showing up in the Senate chamber every time they kill him. Good news for us, he said, as they are paying quite well. He extended his arm to Red. Shall we get to work, my dear? They walked down the aisle and smiled at the crowd, a mixed group of humans and vampires. Friends of the family? Asked one of the ushers. Red had noticed a beautiful young blonde by the coffin. So had Romulus. Big fans of his work, said Romulus. I'll just go and console the grieving granddaughter. That's his widow, said the usher. Red paused. His widow? She looked around the room. This is the senator's funeral, isn't it? Yes, ma'am. Please do go ahead. There's more coming in. She pulled at the wolf's arm and muttered under her breath, Come on, keep moving. People will get suspicious. You distract the mourners at the coffin, and I'll stake the senator. Try not to grope the widow. We don't need a scene. It almost went exactly as planned. Romulus charmed the widow and other mourners, while Red leaned over the coffin, slipped the wooden stake from her cleavage, stabbed it into the senator's heart, and stepped back from the expected cloud of dust. Shit, she said. No dust. Still a dead senator, but now with a piece of wood sticking out of his chest. There was a gasp from the mourners. She grabbed at Romulus. Wrong guy, run! They finally stopped blocks away to catch their breath. Sorry, said Red. I was sure it was that room. Well, they'll be on alert now, so we'll lose the contract. Not a complete loss, he said. I did get the widow's phone number. The end. Oh well, wrong senator, no problem. Stay tuned for more podcasts on Tuesdays and Fridays. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll get the next installment as soon as it's ready. If you enjoy this reading or have other stories you'd like to hear, leave me a comment. And do check out my other posts on my Substack at ravensview.substack.com. Ta-ta for now.